Hello, everyone. All right. Can I say hello? Hello. Good morning. Yeah. Good afternoon. Um, we are so excited to be here with you all today and welcome. My name is Lydia Smyers and I do lead telco media and gaming for the US for Microsoft. And so this show is so super fun for us. However, I'll just sort of open it up by saying, what I'm learning about NAB is that there's actually stripes with how many years you've been attending NAB. So I've had 2 years of NAB. Raise your hand if you've beat me. How many NABs has this been for you? Okay. Yep. Raise your hand. Keep it up. If 5 years, 5 years, people have been here for 5 years, 10 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20. Okay. All right. We got our winner. We got our winner. The 45 NABs. We actually really, truly have our winner over there. Incredible. How about an applause? How about an applause? And the reason why I'm doing that is because I'll tell you what, this is my second, as I shared. So just a little bit of humility there. I learned so much from coming to these shows, from you, from all the ancillary events, from just walking the show floor. And I hope you all do too. At Microsoft, we had the pleasure of kicking off NAB on Sunday with our content and our keynote. And there we really outlined what we're calling powering intelligent media. And that is really founded by a thesis. Our thesis is that with intelligence and trust, you actually can harness AI to really take your data and turn it from legacy silos into actually an asset and to really transform your operations and delight your customers with some really new capabilities. And so we're here today to kind of take the next level of that conversation and take it a bit deeper. And I'm super, super excited because the results of what we're seeing early days with some of our media customers is that ROI is no longer just like return on investment, which is what we all have to measure, but it actually is becoming return on intelligence. Like, how are you powering the data that you have across your environments in a secure way, in a replicable way that can actually get you to some real outcomes? And so I'll ask a final kind of question of the audience here. And I know we just put our hands up for sort of how many times we've been at NAB, but I'm wondering how many here are at NAB in some way, shape, or form looking for blueprints or architectures on how to think about agents in your media workflows. All right. I'm seeing hands. Yes. Okay. Nearly every hand went up. Well, I'm glad to see that because that's why I brought in Jim today. Jim is the CTO of MovieLabs. I'm going to let Jim introduce himself, but honestly, the exciting thing about MovieLabs is that they're advocating and driving tech frameworks and architectural patterns across the industry and really helping advance media to leverage technology to honestly achieve more. That is core to Microsoft's mission. And we are actually members of MovieLabs advisory panel and so privileged to have you here today, Jim. Jim, I was just wondering if you could maybe introduce yourself a little bit for the audience.
Sure. Thank you, Lydia. Yes, so I'm the CTO at MovieLabs, and we're a technology joint venture of the 5 traditional Hollywood studios. And our main initiative for the last 6 years has been about bringing better technology to the scripted film and TV production process, basically moving things to the cloud, making so that creative teams can work from anywhere in the world seamlessly without having to worry about where the infrastructure is. And a really important part of that is being able to automate some of the mundane tasks, software-defined workflows, because it used to be you had to write a lot of software in order to do it. But the 2030 vision for media creation was based upon a bunch of principles about 6 years ago, and AI is really proving the value of those and also the acceleration that AI is providing, which I think we'll get into here. a little bit. But very excited to be here and very glad that Microsoft is partnering with us on the 2030 vision.
Well, it's a pleasure because truly anything that can help advance all of us together, it's just exciting. I mean, MovieLabs had their Industry Forum Summit just last week and the good news is for those of you that weren't able to attend, you're going to get the crib sheet here today. That's what we're here to deliver in terms of the conversation. So one of the key things in this really cool paper, the sort of 2030 vision paper that MovieLabs has produced is sort of your framing and your commitment to this idea of really it's called intelligent automation, right? And I just want to make sure I understand what's your distinction, honestly, Jim, if you could just share AI as a tool, right? Versus AI as a suite of autonomous agents. How do you think about this as MovieLabs? How should we think about it, as an audience really kind of looking to your thought leadership?
Yeah. So AI is clearly having impact, across the spectrum. Some of that has to do with, tools, that creatives may use and, to improve their efficiency, the way that they're working within a particular editorial or VFX project. Our focus is more on the intelligent automation side. So how AI is actually enabling, more efficient, and more intelligent operations. And one of the things there has to do with what makes, automation work, especially in something as complicated as a film or television show. And one of the things that helps drive some of that intelligence, and helps the agents perform more reliably and more consistently, is actually a clear data model, which we call the ontology for media creation, which is able to link and track asset all the way from pre-production, from concept through development, script breakdown, on-set planning, what happens on set, into post-production. And you get all the way into like VFX and post, and you can still easily get back to information that may have come from a script supervisor on set during the shot that you're working on, or back to more things from the narrative context about, what was the production designer thinking in terms of the look for this particular setting? And having that information available in a knowledge graph is tremendously powerful to helping agents really do a better job.
Yeah. Well, I love this idea that you're thinking about with the construct of an intelligence layer, right? This layer that not only provides sort of understanding of a workflow, but we also take it a step further at Microsoft. We actually translate it to say it's also an intelligence layer of your organization. So not just your data and your content, but your entire organization, sort of users, roles, kind of communications. And when you power these layers together, and create that ontology for your organization, that's where you're really able to create agility with this agent sort of framework and agent deployment strategy that you can bring. It's pretty super cool. I will say I'm a visceral learner myself. And so when people start just telling me things, I'm always like, okay, got it. Sure. Maybe. But like, I always say, show me, don't tell me. Right. And I really think that the work that you've done recently with the 2030 Greenlight initiative kind of has helped bring to life a little bit of what you're saying. And, you've built out demos that are not just architecture or slideware, actual real demos that are putting into practice sort of what you're describing. So can you just tell us a little bit more about this effort?
Yes. So, we call it 2030 Greenlight. We're not greenlighting productions. We're greenlighting the 2030 vision. And, basically we bring together partners in our industry forum, to actually build, real workflows with data from real productions, so that we can test out things and see what's working. And, so we've had a number of scenarios having to do with, how do we make what happens, say, when there's a late breaking script change and that needs to propagate through, the production script breakdown process? What can we do to help automate that, make that better? There's a change that happens on set. It turns out that green screen, it needs to be shot because the stuff on the LED wall for this particular virtual production shot didn't work. And so we try to help automate those things and use ontology to help get the structured data communicated through the different stages. And also to automate those. So to, the non-creative tasks, for say, turnovers between editorial, and approvals and VFX and the exchange back. And I think one thing that we've seen in doing some of these POCs is really, the 2030 vision has always been about trying to automate the mundane tasks so that the creative team is not waiting around for some work order or someone to start an Aspera transfer. Turnovers can happen, at the speed of the internet as opposed to at the speed of a manual work order. And with AI, we're really entering, I think, kind of a golden age of that automation. Because there are now multiple ways. It used to be you had to develop software. We had to go have a developer code something. Now those same automations for some of those turnovers, you can have someone vibe code it in a couple hours and hopefully it works. But if you do, AI assisted coding well, you can actually end up with good code. And then you put agentic control on top of that and the ability to actually not even have to do software, but actually have agents mediate some of this automation. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, it's going to radically change, I think, the way that, these scripted film and TV production workflows function.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, your concept of vibe coding is stuck with me. I'm sure many of you have this experience. I mean, my 19-year-old son is vibe coding his way into an internship for the summer, and I just am continue to be struck by what they're able to accomplish. What you also shared, though, was just how far AI can go in terms of amplifying the storyteller and the ability to sort of let the story rise. We on Sunday, and so catch this video on demand if you've not seen it, but Microsoft featured Creative Artists Network, which is an organization that produced feature-length film with 100% AI. And the actual script writing, the storytelling was still powered by the creators, but what they were able to accomplish was pretty remarkable in the sense that all aspects of the workflows were powered by AI that were overseen by humans. And it was a pretty powerful story on just how to push the edge of what we're seeing today. I wanted to ask a little bit, about what you've seen with your Greenlight effort and this concept of privilege and this concept of security. Because we know in these workflows that you built out, security is so paramount. I think how many of us have had a conversation this week, that included security? Like, yeah, everybody, right? Mythos, right? If it's not Mythos, it's OpenClaw. Like, the question is just coming constantly. And we're being asked not only, in the conference rooms, we're being asked at the cocktail parties, and we got to have answers for both. And because people know we're in tech and we have a point of view, but I think that there's real tension that studios are experiencing, and there's tension between what we know to be sort of zero trust principles and assuring that we've got secure environments that provide the right guardrails to protect, the enterprises and honestly the creatives. But at the same time, we've got security requirements, zero trust principles, and actual, it's a little bit in conflict with potentially the creative process. So I would just love your thoughts a little bit about zero trust, how you're thinking about that in the Greenlight demos, and just a little bit of insight.
Well, first of all, foremost, security should not get in the way of the creative process, right? It should not be visible to the creative team. But that's hard to do. And it's hard to do in conjunction with trying to get to, a zero trust level of, least privilege in particular. So we're at MovieLabs, part of the 2030 vision is security. There are three core things. One of them is, foundational principles that have to do with getting stuff in the cloud and accessible. Security is the second category. And then the third category is this software defined workflow, automation, interoperable data models. On the security side, we've been big advocates of adopting zero trust and getting to that place where every single access to a service is, authenticated to a clear identity, and that the authorizations for that identity are then, conveyed and enforced by the services and the infrastructure. It's challenging because it's more granular, and it also is something which is, ideally would have automation. If you're going to start trying to get granular, it becomes untenable to have an administrator go in and say, oh, okay, I see we just hired, a new assistant editor. Assistant editors need these particular permissions, and we have 10 different SaaS offerings. Let me go configure each of those.
Oh,
so
I've got a headache. It's not from last night's cocktail party.
Good. And, we have a lot of headaches at MovieLabs thinking about security and nightmares. But, AI actually offers some opportunities for solutions in some cases, because you could actually imagine if I have a reliable and trusted AI agent, I can have it assign permissions. I can have it, if there's a ticket, I need access to this and now, and here's why I need access to it. At a lot of the studios, that ends up being manually evaluated before they get authorizations. And usually it's legitimate, so, 90% of them get approved. But if you can actually have an agent go off and prepare all the information, the background, who requested it, what is their actual role, what's the project status, and where are they at in it, and say, okay, all looks good, then maybe human in the loop can say very quickly, okay, you get access. Little bit of friction, but hopefully it didn't slow the production down. So some good things potentially from agentic AI on helping to manage zero trust. The flip side of that is trying to get to least privilege on some of these agents. And so we did a POC with Azure using Microsoft Foundry to generate an AI agent that was basically educated on the knowledge graph for the production, and was also given access to a database of kind of summary fact cards that would also help it be more reliable in responding to questions. One of the challenges with knowledge graphs is that agentic AI sometimes has trouble making multiple hops through a knowledge graph, and each hop can be a little less reliable. And so if you can give a little bit more of a hint, it can help out. And so basically in Azure, we use Cosmos DB to actually keep these little hints for the agent. Now the database has multiple projects in it. Not all users have access to all projects. So we didn't want the agent just acting in God mode, like, oh, I can do anything. And a lot of times that's kind of the default. Instead, we first wanted to constrain it so that it would only access projects that the user had access to. So it did getting into the weeds here, it's called an on behalf of workflow, where basically the user's authorizations are used to scope what the agent can do. So it can't access other projects in the database, only the films that this person is working on. But if we just simply gave the database the user's token, the user might have delete access. They might be able to delete the portions of the database, but the agent doesn't need that. So we actually implemented something using a little bit of extra code in Azure to give a combined restriction. So the agent could only work on projects that in the database that the user had access to, but even though the user had full permissions to delete and write, the agent didn't. And that gets at least a little bit closer to zero trust. But it also is, things are going in the other direction in terms of the way that agents are being used. And, a lot of times someone say on their desktop, they do OpenClaw, and okay, well, I'll give them my Google password. I'll give them my password to, Frame.io or whatever the things I'm working on. And the agent basically has full permissions to everything that you can do in those. And given that these agents are sometimes unreliable and not deterministic, it's very different than if I had a hard-coded service that say, okay, service, I want you to go off and, send a Slack message to these people or send an email or only read my email to summarize some things. Instead, we're seeing the formation of like general purpose agents where the agent, at one point the person may say, oh, go give me a new cost estimate for this particular proposed production change. And it goes through all the production databases and figures things out and then comes back with a summary. Great use of agentic AI. It only needs read access, kind of like what we did with Microsoft on the little POC. But more and more people don't want to have 20 different task specific agents. They want an agent that does everything.
Super agent.
And so if that same agent that is doing that cost estimate it only needs to be read only, also can you, update the financial spreadsheet? And, there's another task where maybe, I actually wanted to be able to delete projects. The default from a setup perspective, administration perspective is, in order to make this agent work, I just need to give it complete access to everything that I can do, which is hugely risky given the unreliability of agents. And so with this little POC, which seems very simple, I think we're kind of like exploring ways because we need to figure out ways to make this work. Otherwise, the required functionality that general purpose agents need is going to open up huge, security vulnerabilities. And so really appreciate Microsoft kind of joining us to try and get, a little bit ahead of some of this to explore some of the possible solutions because it's a very hard problem. And I've been talking to lots of different security people at this conference and, no one has had a good solution.
Yeah. Well, you've painted, a very real picture of not just the importance of security, but also just the complexity that it presents in an environment that is really rapidly evolving. What I will share is, and you can go to Microsoft's booth and ask for a bit of a demo, but in 9 days from now, on May 1st, Microsoft will have generally available a new product that we announced, a few months back called Agent 365. And think of this as a bit of a control plane for your agent ecosystem. It allows agents to be registered and it creates a whole registry of agents. It allows you to manage agents, provision agents, and actually oversee security protocols, governance protocols, and assure that they're in bounds and aligned with your governance standards, as well as then allows you to oversee and observe the agents. Think of this right now as a dashboard, which powers up an ability for you to quickly triage agents that may be at risk or may not, and can enable you to sort of get more of a sort of a single pane of glass based approach to the agent ecosystem that you're building. I'll say a couple of things. So number one, this is based on your AD identities, your Entra ID. And so think of this as just like you'd be provisioning an identity for a worker or an employee. You'd be provisioning an identity with role-based access and conditions to an agent. All right there, just in the way in which you're familiar with provisioning identities today. What I'll say is that this is a hugely important sort of platform and plan and strategy for Microsoft, know that you'll be getting more from us on this. But I'd encourage you, we're actually at Build next month when we're going to be demoing tons more, bringing to life lots of workflows, including media specific workflows and capabilities with this in mind. So if you're interested in more, head over to our demo to kind of get a quick view. But we expect to continue to invest in this. What I'll say is the statistic. So Microsoft's a pretty big company, right? Like, sort of any day the number changes. Let's say 150,000 employees, at Microsoft. When we first turned this on at Microsoft, guess how many agents we had? And we had no idea. We've got 150,000 employees. How many agents did we have across our whole ecosystem? When we flipped this on, and all of a sudden the blinking lights went on. Guess numbers? Zero agents in our ecosystem. That's one potential answer. Any others? Guesses? 500,000. And so the vision is that this platform is going to allow you to first observe, administer, and oversee. Now, what I'll also share is because of our partnership and our commitment to MovieLabs and the great sort of pioneering industry standards work they're doing, we had the ability to share with you, I would say, our beta and preview version of Agent 365. And you had a chance to take a look at both the intent and sort of, where features were existing today and where we intend to sort of build out more. What was your quick takeaway, Jim? Love to hear your input.
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to absolutely second and double down on the statement of how extremely important logging is.
Yeah.
And also identity logging, both the agent identity and the user identity that are associated with what's happening, because, you can't figure out what went wrong if you don't have the logs.
Right.
Or detect maybe something not looking right before it happens. And so one of the things we do know about trying to improve security of agentic workflows is transparency and logging of absolutely everything. So to your question on, agentic, 365 Foundry. So yeah, I think we were a little bit ahead on this. I mentioned we had to write a little bit of code for this. My understanding is that actually is going into the product as a configurable feature. And so I think, it's a great example of, the way that you're looking at getting ahead of the new requirements that are coming in these workflows, which are different. You can't just simply pass the user's token on or have all of their claims be used by the agent downstream.
Yeah.
That is too risky. Now, I mentioned why it's maybe hard to manage that least privilege in those cases, but we have to find a way. And I think, the fact that you're out there trying to address these very, very emerging issues is great. And like I said, I don't think we know all the answers,
right,
but we certainly need the ability to do things like what we demonstrated in the POC. We just need to figure out how that works in this world of, multiple agent networks and, multifunction agents that in different contexts may need different sets of privileges.
It's really true. It's a super important problem, and we're really excited to be bringing, what we know to be a solution that provides some simplicity, both with Microsoft agents, but also agents created by any platform, any third-party agents we can register, and serve up in this platform. But so, I really appreciate it. I'm noticing time, and I certainly want to open it up. If anyone has burning questions, you're welcome to ask one here among the group, or just see Jim or myself sort of once we conclude. But I would think that the final question I have for you, Jim, is, you're hopping on the plane here a little bit at some point, headed back. We're going to be all ruminating on what our learnings were for throughout the whole week. Is there anything, and what is it that's keeping you up at night, right? What is it for you that, are we at an inflection point? What's the sort of urgent thing we all have to just go address and lean into, because we all need to sleep well. So what's keeping you up at night?
I think it's how rapidly agentic flows and also individual vibe coding. I mean, it's great that it's so empowering to create, more automation, more access to things, more understanding of structure, in these projects. But, it also poses just such a huge, risk of, there being things that are not following best practices for security, for zero trust, for, controlling these things. So I think the very rapid, proliferation of Gen AI and is wonderful. It's going to all these great promises, but it's happening a little bit faster than we're actually able to manage the security of. And if there's one thing that keeps me up at night, it's probably that we may have some lessons coming that may have, have a result of bad consequences, but, we'll get through those.
Well, it's so true. Security is absolutely paramount. It's coming up in every conversation I have. What's also keeping me up at night is just, how Microsoft can really help work alongside each of you and close the gap from idea or pilot or proof of concept to sort of true realized value. In MovieLabs, Jim, you all were a huge partner with us in that example of Agent 365, right? We had a bit of a gap with your beta view of our capabilities. You provided us some requirements. We've built it in the product and it'll be GA in 9 days. So, this is the kind of high speed frequency you should continue to expect from Microsoft, but also any partner with whom you engage out there in what is today's tech ecosystem. And so I just really, unless there's any other questions from folks, we do have mics. I really wanted to take a wrap here and just say thank you. Thanks first to Jim, your time with us today and the work that you're doing. Because what really inspires me is that the work we're doing across industry is centered on Microsoft's vision. Microsoft's vision, our total focus, is to empower people and organizations to achieve more. And the work that we're doing with MovieLabs is strictly focused on empowering storytellers to get their story out. That's where we think the advent of AI in media is really going to help transform. I'm excited about what's ahead, but I'm more excited about walking along the journey with each one of you to kind of make those dreams possible. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you.